How you all doing? Good. I got the loud boys up front up here. Oh my, I love the t-shirts, folks. I don't know if you can all see that, but all the t-shirts say, I love Dan Wallin. No. Yes. That's what you get for trying to play a joke on me. So welcome all to ng-conf. I'm really excited to be here this year, and as we were preparing talks, I had a lot of things that I wanted to talk about, but I thought about the people in this room first. And all of you, think about the combined brain power in this room and how much Angular you have all written together collectively. I mean, give yourselves a round of applause right here. I mean, you guys have done so much. And think about all the problems and challenges that you've overcome. I mean, that's why we do this, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. But it's fun because you get to try things, you run into challenges, you work with your friends, if you have friends, and then you can work with them and kind of solve the problems. If you don't, Dan's willing to be yours. So what I'd like to talk about today was the people who are going through these challenges. Sometimes we get new people to Angular, and they have to figure out how do we solve these same problems that all of these experts are solving. And even the experts end up having problems as well. So let's talk about today 3 specific problems that you can have when you're working with Angular and how you can think through solving these. All right, so today we're talking about these 3 Angular tips. The first one we're going to talk about is, have any of you here used this technology, Rxjs? All right, it's pretty cool, isn't it? And Rxjs, it does a lot of things. Well, there's a couple different things along the way that you might run into when you're doing Rxjs, and we'll look at how we can solve some of those challenges. The next one is state management. Thanks to Brandon and Mike, Brandon Roberts, Mike Ryan, they did great work on this. We have a great NGRX state management tool that a lot of us use. There's some things along the way that can be challenging with this that you can overcome. We'll talk about how you can get through those. And then finally, cloud services. How do we take our app and deploy them to the cloud when we're done? And what do we really want to do? Because there's about 101 ways to get it to the cloud. What are our goals? Do we care about performance or scalability or security or anything like that? Do we care how much it costs? Do we make care if it's easy? So we're going to talk through these 3 different tips today. First, let's start off with Rxjs. One of the most common problems we run into is subscriptions. We would create our own observables, and we get all these subscriptions, but we have to make sure we manage these. Because what happens if you subscribe to something and you don't unsubscribe? Anybody? It's a leak. Yes, it's a leak in the building. So you get a leak with your application, and these can add up and be a problem over time. And there's several patterns for you to deal with this. Now, I'm here to tell you that in demo world, and I'm a presenter, so in demo world, everything always works, right? And there's always one subscription, and you unsubscribe once. But in real-world apps, you might have a lot of subscriptions. What happens if the first couple you unsubscribe, but then you forget, or somebody else looks at your code? It can become an issue. So let's take a look here. One technique to deal with unsubscribing to subscriptions is to just unsubscribe manually like this. So here we're defining our subscriptions up top. Then we're setting our subscriptions to a variable. And then we're going to go destroy our subscriptions. And this absolutely works. There's only 2 on here because that's all I could fit on the slide. But what if you have more? What happens when the next one comes in? Are you going to remember to both create the top variable and put it in the ng-on-destroy at the bottom? You're going to do a lot of copy and paste magic? I mean, this works, but it's a little bit more code that you might want to deal with. So there's another option. There's something called the TakeUntil strategy. I made that word up. It's using the TakeUntil operator. And here, what you do is you use a pipe, and you put a TakeUntil into it. Now, this works as well, but there's a couple caveats here. So the first caveat is, if you already have a pipe, it's pretty easy to just tack TakeUntil as the last one. And you want to make it the last one in your pipe. But what if you didn't have a pipe already? If this was just get customers, and then it was subscribe, you'd have to add the pipe, just add the TakeUntil to do this. And you have to create like a notifier or some variable that you stick in the ng-on-destroy that does it all. But you have to make this last. Or do you have to make it kind of last? This works until it doesn't work. So the rule of always make it last doesn't always work if you're doing things like a share replay. And you can read this blog post by Max, ng-wizard, at the bottom of the page on his site and learn more about this. So this TakeUntil works until it it doesn't work. And maybe you haven't run into this, but you might. Maybe you've already run into it and read this great blog post. So what do? You stop using Rxjs. No. We love Rxjs, and it works great, does great stuff for us. So how do you do this? So a good friend of mine, Ward Bell, sat down one day when Dan Wallin and I were talking to him about this. We're like, it'd be really great if we just create like an array of these subscriptions. We can automatically track that array and then just destroy them all at once. And the code isn't that hard, but being Ward Bell's like, I can whip it out in 5 minutes. I said, name that tune. And Ward created this great thing called subsync. So you can see here, if you use subsync, you just create one subsync, and then you add all of your subscriptions to it, and then at the end, you unsubscribe. So just to show that really closely, all you do is add your subscriptions one at a time. And then you have one line of code up top, one line of code in the bottom, and it cleans up all of your subscriptions in your code. So the key here is destroys them all at once, makes it super easy to do, and there's really no extra repetitive code maintenance. So you just npm install subsync and give thanks to Ward Bell when you see him at the conference. If you haven't seen him yet, you will. If you don't know what I mean, ask your neighbor. So, second tip. We move along, and related to Rxjs, there's this thing called NGRX, which is built on the Redux pattern. And it helps us manage state in our applications. And what I really love about Mike and Brandon, the creators of this library with Rob Wormald, is they always are the first ones to say, not everybody needs to use this. There's a point in your app that you need to use it when you have a lot of state that you're sharing across it. That's great. But what happens when you have a lot of domain models? So it's a great, powerful state management tool, but when you have 2 models, there's a little bit of code. When you have 20, the code grows. When you have 100 or 200 models, you've got a lot of code in your application that you're managing. So there's different things you can do. And we all love the state management tool because we get this awesome Chrome extension, the time-traveling debugging, which I love going home and telling my wife. She's like, what'd you do today? I did time-traveling debugging. And she's like, that's cool. Now make dinner. Time-traveling debugging is awesome. We get all this great stuff with it. But how do we get it without the extra code? If you don't know what I mean by the extra code, look here on the left. Here's an application running NGRX with 2 models, villains and heroes from the Tour of Heroes. We have actions, we have effects for hitting the database, we have reducers, or functions for our state, we have dispatchers to fire off our actions, we have action creators, we have selectors, and we have a chicken in a tree. We've got everything. It's all on the application. What if we could do it in 2 files, or 1, without all that extra code? Well, wait a minute. What are you losing there? So the key here is we have a problem. We've got 100 models. If each model has to have all those things, there could be thousands of lines of code to manage those things, which means every line of code you write is an opportunity for what? A bug, maintenance, refactoring, copy-paste code, which always works, right? Copy-pasta. You never really know exactly what's happening there. I like the code blind, personally. So what can you do about this? Well, a lot of that code is very repetitive. So about 1.5 years ago, sitting down with my buddies Ward Bell and Dan Wallin, and we were talking about this, thinking it'd be really great if we could use this tool in our scenarios where we have a lot of CRUD in our applications. Let's talk about CRUD. You may not think you're using a lot of it, but think about a lot of the apps you're doing. You've got orders, you've got products, you've got customers, you've got items, you've got marketing. You've got all these things in your app. And you're inserting and deleting and updating and selecting from these things. It's very common with your entity models to do this. And it's very repetitive to have to create the same code over and over for it. But you want the value of NGRX. So using things like generics, we can refactor away and make it easier to use the same code just using generics, so we have all the actions, effects, reducers out of the box. So with 2 files, we can do this whole thing. Let me reiterate. 2 files, you can do the whole thing. Same thing with NGRX. So if your issue before with NGRX was too much code, I don't want to go down that road, but Mike and Brandon are such nice guys, now you've got a reason to try this as well. And this can really be a great use case for about 80% of the code that you write. So I want to show you NGRX with NGRX data and without it, and then we'll kind of show you where it can lead to. All right, so if we go back over to our code here, here is NGRX in an app. And I'll give you links to all the source code later that you have. In this application, we can see we've got a store over here. And these are the code files we just looked at a moment ago. So here I've got my hero actions. And this might look familiar to you. So here we've got up top our add hero with our add hero success and add hero error. And all these different actions. It kind of looks like scrolling quotes from a movie, you know? In a land before time. And then at the bottom, we've got all of our types that we just concatenate together with a union, so we can use those. And again, 124 lines of code to go down that road. We got the same thing for villains. What about our effects, if we choose to use effects with it, so we can talk to our database? About 71 lines of code, which are basically using our actions and firing off these actions to like a database or an API that can go get our heroes or villains or update them, and then when they're done, fire off actions for success or failure. What about our reducers? Our reducers are another 130 lines of code. We're doing a lot of fun dotting using the spread operator to clone our data so we can get our state out, replace state, delete state, add state, doing all the things that we want to do in our application. If we go down to our services folder here, you can see that we've got a data service to actually go get our data. That's the HTTP calls. We've got selectors because we don't always want the entire store. Sometimes we want an entire list of heroes. Sometimes we want just one. We might have special selectors we have to write. And all in total, if you look at all that code again, everything in that folder, you're looking at all that. Now, the one thing we have to do is a little bit of fixed code up front as well. So we have this app store module you have to create. And the app store module just pulls in my store and my effects and calls it a day. Now, let's take a look at NGRX Data. So NGRX Data has a store as well. Here's the module for the store. You'll notice the store code is the same in NGRX Data as it was in NGRX. But here, the additional line you have is you also pull in this extension. NGRX Data does not replace NGRX. It's an extension to it. You're building on top of NGRX. It's not a wrapper. You get every single feature of NGRX out of the box. In addition, you get a lot of this that just takes care of a lot of that CRUD opportunity for you. So the magic is behind this in the entity config. Let's look at that file. This is the second file here. Every new entity that you add will cost you a whopping 1 line of code. Want products? You just add them one at a time. Every entity you have takes 1 more line of code. And the rest of it goes on convention. It's convention-based configuration where it's assuming that if you've got a hero, then the model's called hero, and that you've got a get hero, get heroes, a get hero by ID, update hero, delete hero. You get the idea. It's going through those conventions. Well, what happens when your conventions don't work? Well, you can override those too and configure them. Because we know that things that do things for you, they're only good until you need it to do something different. So NGRX Data has a policy in here where we can override stuff. For example, I don't want it to get heroes and just stick an S at the end of it, make my function look like something like this, get heroes. That would look funny. I want it to be like this. So to do that, we have an override here for plural names to say hero is actually going to be heroes in plural form. Then we can do this for anything we want. We can override where the APIs are in the back end. By convention, it's API/heroes. If it's not that, you can override it. If I don't like the reducer that's in there, you can override the reducer. If you don't like the effects, you can override the effects, either on one thing or on many. There's plenty of configuration points in here to let you do what you need to do. And again, the key is there's 16 lines of code in this file, and all you have to do is add 1 line of code to each one to get to this point. Now, the best part of this, in my opinion, is that it helps solve a lot of this stuff, where in your application, you've got a lot of code and a lot of models, and now instead of having a store with all the files that you're going to see here on the left, we'll put them side by side. You can see all those files there in the store. Now here on the right, the only files you have in the store are those. Now, would that make it easier? I think so. So NGRX Data, the big catch with it was, hey, this was written in a garage with a couple people, right? So is it real? Well, I'm happy to announce here that thanks to Brandon and Mike Ryan that they've merged NGRX Data in with NGRX. It's now an official part of the library to be supported by the team. And you can actually check out the docs right up on the next.ngrx.io. And it's actually in there with version 8 of NGRX. So a round of applause for Brandon and Mike for taking this on. These guys are pretty awesome. So for my third tip, I wanted to share something that I really am passionate about. Scaling applications is important. Getting a single app up there is important too, but when you've got hundreds of users, thousands of users, millions or 10 millions of them, it's important to know how to scale your app and worry about redundancy and performance and security. There's a new term, well, newish term, that some of you may have heard of called the jam stack. The jam stack is a new type of modern web application, a design, if you will, that's come out. Let's talk about this a bit. So the jam stack, the J means it's JavaScript. You've got dynamic JavaScript. This is our Angular. I think all of you are familiar with that piece, right? It also has APIs. So instead of talking to like databases or app servers directly, it goes through APIs. These could be third-party APIs or serverless functions, for that matter. And it's also got markup. This could be templated markup from a static site generator, something like Gatsby or a CMS, or a build tool for web apps, something like Angular has as well. So we know these things. These are things we all do right now. Notice what is not here. Servers. No servers. A lot of this based upon serverless technology. And the cool thing about serverless is it doesn't mean you don't have servers. It'd be kind of cool if we didn't. But it does mean that you just think about them less. So serverless is really more about not worrying about the infrastructure that's in the cloud. So we'll think about why would you want to go down this road. First, security. What do people hack? Servers. If the servers aren't something you're managing and configuring yourself, and you're letting a cloud provider do it, you don't have to worry about it nearly as much. If it's a static site or a CDN, there's really nothing to hack at all. So that helps out here too. What else do you got? You've got a broken clicker. There we go. High performance, another thing we can do with the application. So high performance for on a CDN right at the front, super fast to load it. We can get our APIs through serverless. Wicked fast is there as well. Highly scalable, because these things can scale for you on their own. Serverless is on consumption if you use it, so it just scales up. It can also have zero scale if nobody's using it, so you're not even paying for it when you're not using it. Things like Lambda or Azure Functions, for example. And of course, low cost in there. If you put a site up there in like a storage solution and you use it with serverless technology, it could cost you less than $1 a month, which is pretty darn cool. So this is the why piece. And what could it look like for Angular? What would you be doing? So the evolution of the modern web, let's look at what we build mostly today. We used to build like two-tier applications back in the late 90s. Then we got into this web browser with a web server. Then we've got like our app server model, like with Java, ASP.NET, Node, etc. Hid in a database. And that works good, but we need a server or multiple servers to make this work. With the Jamstack, it kind of works like this. You've got a web browser, and then you host the application from that, and then you get your APIs directly to it as well, all up front in the cloud. So it might look something like this in the application for us. We've got a web browser. I'm going to use Azure Functions for it and show with a serverless API. It's going to use a proxy from Azure Functions, so we can hit one URL and get a custom domain and use SSL if we want to, and then, which we should. And then we can have an HTTP trigger for all of our API routes instead of using Node Express. And we can use Azure Storage to actually host the application, which is just file storage. So let's take a quick look at the code for this and how this can work for you. All right. So here's an application which I will show you the link to how you get here, and you can try it all yourself later. There's a GitHub repo you can use. There's a live site that you can hit. And there's actually 2 tutorials that will teach you how to do this up on our site. So in this code, what we've got here is a serverless function app in our application. And when we look up here, there's a functions folder. How do you create a serverless function app? Easiest way to do that is if you use these Azure extensions with functions, all you have to do, and I've got a great name here, PapaFunk1. You come up here and you hover over these, you can create a new project. You click that project, it'll create an Azure Functions project, run it locally for you. And then inside of that, you can create functions. And here you can see I've got my heroes get function. And here's my code for it. It's simply just an Azure function. It's using TypeScript, no doubt, so we can get all of our IntelliSense. And we're just saying, go off and call our heroes right there. Now, the reason that I have a very small function is because I was using Node Express APIs before this. So over here, I actually have a server folder, which I'm not using anymore. In that server folder, you're going to see this is actually just Node Express, not Azure Functions, and it's just making my node calls, hitting my database, doing what I need to do. This file right here, if I put it side by side with the other one, no, that's not side by side. If I do it like this, you're going to see that those files are almost exactly identical, other than instead of using Express up top, I'm using Azure Functions instead. All the code is practically the same, other than the one parameter here to get request and response changes from request and response to pull it out of this thing called the context. But every other line of code is exactly the same. This allowed me to migrate my Node Express app over to functions in less than 5 minutes, which is pretty cool. And without even being in the cloud, I can come up here and I can debug it locally, right through here. I can say attach to node functions and run my functions locally. Or I can run my Angular app with functions locally by clicking that button. Let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. Break the code, John. Break the code. Now what's happening is VS Code is compiling in the Angular app. It's compiling the functions app all locally, no internet connection, on your machine, so you can run it here without hitting a cloud first. So you can even do this on an airplane. Building everything up, and when it's done, it's going to launch the browser, and here's the application. And notice the browser paused, and it says paused in VS Code. It's about to get my list of heroes. Over here, on the left, there's my heroes component. On the right, there's my function. Actually, that's the wrong function. This is the one I wanted. We'll put it over here. So on the left is my Angular app. On the right is my function app. And notice the breakpoint on the right is unverified. The breakpoint on the left is hit, getting my heroes. That's Angular. I'm going to let it continue and watch what happens. Now it's breaking into the functions. So I'm debugging my Angular app and my functions app all in one call, in one computer, all locally on my machine. And you can see here you got both of them that you can toggle between in one debugger. That's just pretty darn cool. And then when you're done, your application's running here. And then when you want to deploy it, all you have to do is go over to your application. And I'll just minimize these folders. If we go to the Angular source files called dist, I can right-click on this folder where my app is, and I can choose Deploy to Static Website. And in about a minute, it'll upload it to the cloud. And then I could also go, and I could say, all right, just doing it a different way, go over my functions. I can hit this button here, which means hit your head on the ceiling. That button will push your Azure Functions up to the cloud as well. And once it does both of those, the final result is you get a link like this, which you can try now if you want to, pop-a-func, azurewebsites.net heroes, and you can put a custom domain on top of this. And if you hit that, you get the application right here. And that's running functions in the cloud with an Angular application with no node servers, no ASP.NET, no app service, no cost for a server at all. Pretty cool stuff using the Jamstack. There we go. So the tips in this one I wanted to get through today were really just how do you manage your subscriptions. The Subsync's a great way to use that. Definitely check it out. NGRX Data is fantastic for managing your entities, great for state management, and the Jamstack. And as promised, you can try all these things out yourself. If you take a quick screenshot of that or click on these links, you'll get to them. First, the Subsync, really easy to use. NGRX, you can check out the docs. There's 2 tutorials for both the static site and the functions that you can check out and do exactly what I showed you today. You can also go ahead and get the VS Code extensions for deploying static sites or functions. Just build right into VS Code then. And then finally, if you want to try exactly what I did, if you click that bottom link, that's the GitHub repo that gets you there. And you can walk through everything that's up there and open up issues if you'd like to try anything else. I hope you all had a great time here at ng-conf, and definitely share the great stuff that you're doing with everybody else, because you're building awesome things with Angular. Thank you.